Hi everyone, my name is Mason and I work for Comet Backup here in New Zealand. Welcome along to the Lysithea release webinar. So this is a new webinar schedule. I've been regularly running this webinar series that showcases the latest and greatest new features Comet has to offer. For the last few years I've been running these webinars every month, and by my count this is episode 21. But for this year we're changing up the release schedule a bit. It's all on the webinar platform and you can subscribe to notifications about when we go live. But the short summary is that instead of running a monthly webinar, we're now writing monthly blog posts instead, and we'll just have these webinars once a quarter around the big quarterly releases. So please check out our blog if you want to keep your finger on the pulse. My talk today will probably be about 30 minutes, and that's including some time for questions at the end. If you're watching this live on our webinar platform, I'm coming to you live. It's 9 a.m. here in New Zealand. Then there is a chat widget. You can click the button to pop it open. And if you have any questions as we go, just write them in and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. So about 30 minutes, maybe a little more, a little less. Everyone's busy. I'll try and keep it short otherwise. Hope you got a coffee, get settled, and I'll just press on with things. So as you've seen from the title, today I'm going to talk about Comet 22.5 Lysithea, our latest and greatest software release version. So the 22.5 version number, it's the year and the month. We release new Comet versions every week under the Voyager release track, and then every quarter, 4 times a year, we take all of our regular Voyager development and roll it up into these quarterly milestone releases, and that's sort of your new stable fixed point to build on and offer to your customers, and we'll support it with patches and in the tickets. And so another quarter's flown by, and today I'm going to recap all the new things you can expect when upgrading to Lysithea. So what you're seeing here in the picture, this is Lysithea itself. It's another moon of Jupiter, and all of Jupiter's moons are named after women who were close to Zeus in Greek mythology. We've named all the quarterly releases after moons of Jupiter recently. So our Voyager releases started with Mercury in the inner solar system a few years ago now, and we've been slowly moving outward to the outer planets and moons. Lysithea is the 10th moon of Jupiter. It's pretty small. This is the best photo that humanity has of it. It was discovered only in 1938. 1938 is pretty recent by modern standards. Think the very first of Jupiter, we've known about Jupiter since antiquity. The first of Jupiter's moons were discovered by Galileo in the 1600s, but, scientists and astronomers are still finding new moons. Jupiter is up to 80 now, 80. The 80th was the moon Ursa, discovered just in 2018. So enough about the name. What about the features? We've counted 10 features and 15 enhancements this quarter for Lysithea. The full changelogs are available on our website in the release notes section, and today I will walk you through all the main ones. But before I get started on those features, I'd like to give a quick update on storage providers. It's been a really exciting few months for cloud storage providers. Just a quick refresher that Comet works well with many cloud storage providers, and even if we don't have an official integration, you can usually use the S3 compatible or SFTP options. One important thing to know about Comet is that it performs at its best when you minimize the latency from the end customer through to the storage location. So when choosing a cloud provider, we recommend looking for a storage region as close as possible to your customer base. So, same country would be ideal. And speaking of same country, our friends at Wasabi have continued to launch new regions, the latest few additions being Australia, Sydney, Australia, launched on May the 9th. And in our Comet offices down here in New Zealand, we're particularly pleased with the latency and performance of the new Sydney region. So this new region is automatically detected in Comet software, and we don't require any region-specific settings for Wasabi. And just yesterday, in fact, there's another new region opening in Singapore as well. So excellent news for everyone with customers in Southeast Asia. Wasabi have an excellent track record and excellent price, and we'd certainly recommend them for anyone to use with Comet. Moving on from Wasabi, another new storage provider hitting the market is iDrive E2. So this is an S3 compatible service, following in the proud tradition of naming them as a single letter and number. And E2 offers, they've got storage regions in the US and in the EU. They've got great performance. They've got an industry-leading price. It's only $4 per terabyte per month, with free egress and 90% off for your first year. They also support bucket versioning for storage immutability, which is the perfect defense against ransomware. So that's a very advanced feature. It puts them in a pretty rare crowd. E2 works very well with Comet. You can absolutely expect to hear more about them in the future. mention Comet Backup when signing up to get 1 terabyte of free storage for 30 days. The third provider I want to talk today about is Cloudflare. So you may have heard of Cloudflare. They're a major player in the web caching, web application firewall, serverless compute kind of. They've got 100 products. They're a publicly listed company with a multi-billion-dollar market cap, and now they're launching S3 compatible storage. So we are sitting up and paying attention. Cloudflare R2, it's another letter and number combination name. It's S3 compatible. It works great with Comet. They've recently launched their service as an open beta, so you can sign up for it and use it. The published price is $15 per terabyte per month, so it's not an industry-leading price, but it is notable because it's region-free. Cloudflare maintain points of presence in multiple hundreds of data centers across the world, which can potentially lead to excellent latency and performance results. So that's my quick roundup of major storage provider announcements from the last few months. So I'm going to segue into talking about some actual new Comet backup features now, starting with another storage-related topic. So Comet Backup supports many different cloud storage providers if you bring your own storage credentials. However, when you configure cloud storage in Comet, it's very important that you don't reuse storage credentials across different customers. So in order to do this, you have a few different options. For each customer, you could either manually create individual storage vaults and keys and access buckets for them. So each user gets their own bucket. Or if that's too much work, you can proxy through storage role. You can use Comet Server Storage Role to transit the data. This works very well on any cloud storage provider. It's very easy to set up. I did mention about the latency earlier, and I will come back to talking more about storage role later in today's talk. But the ideal way to use cloud storage in Comet is to have Comet Server automatically set up new buckets and access keys for each customer, so that the customer's backup can still go direct to cloud, but with automatic management. And we call this the request storage vault or requestable system. And up till now, Comet Server has supported this requestable provisioning for Backblaze B2, Wasabi Cloud Storage, and we've got a custom integration point. But we're very happy now to announce that Comet Server has extended this support to Amazon AWS and custom IAM compatible cloud services. So this is there's a lot of S3 compatible cloud storage providers on the market, but having requestable support to automatically provision private buckets and per customer credentials automatically it's a more advanced level of integration than just S3 compatible. You can't do it with the S3 protocol alone. There's not yet an industry standard for providers to use. We're working with individual storage providers to expand our requestable integrations over time. Next thing I want to talk about is getting started guide. So a quick show of hands. Who's seen this box here before? Of course, I can't see your hands from here, but when using a Comet server for the first time, or if you have a reseller tenant and you've given them access for the first time, Comet server is always shown this info box with instructions on what to do next, how to download the client software and log in and run your first backup job. And it's pretty important to have these basic steps for first-time users of Comet server. However, what we've found is that this big block of text is going to disappear when you visit other pages. It's not staying up to date with what your next steps are. And so we've replaced it. This big block of text is now gone, and you now have instead this larger sidebar that walks you through each step individually. The guide appears the first time an admin logs into a new server and can be dismissed at any time. It just walks you through all the first steps of running a Comet server. Here's a larger screenshot. So it starts off with configuring storage settings. It moves on to adding a first user account, downloading and installing the Comet Backup desktop client, getting that user to register a device, create the first protected item, all the way through to running your first backup job. And the progress through these steps is refreshed automatically, and these steps will get ticked off using a live connection to the Comet server, so you won't lose track of where you're up to. If you're an established Comet server administrator, if it's been a while since you saw the new user setup text box, then you won't notice this new change either. But if you onboard new reseller tenants, or if you create a new Comet server, then hopefully it helps you walk through the process a little more smoothly. But obviously the biggest win is just for new partners coming on board. New partners grow the Comet community, and that's good for everyone. Speaking of the Comet community, internationalization is a high priority for us at Comet. Obviously, just if you have customers in local markets, it enables you to serve them much more effectively. And so Comet is available in 13 fully translated languages, including English. And the Comet 22.5 Lysithea release includes updated translations for 10 of those, including Danish, German, Spanish, French, Croatian, Italian, Brazilian Portuguese, European Portuguese, Russian, and Hebrew. All of Comet can be used in translation from the end user desktop app and customer-facing email reports all the way through to the admin section, and now even the new first-time user guide instructions I just showed. We've also found and fixed many small gaps where the underlying English was showing through, pagination footer on tables, strings to mind. Now, our staff mostly only speak English, so we do hire translation contractors for a lot of this work. But over the years, we have consistently found that the best quality translations come from you, all our wonderful Comet community and partners who you have a full understanding of both the software, the IT, MSP backup industry, and the language, of course. So if you see a typo in our translations, or if you want to help translate Comet into a new language, we would love your contribution. It couldn't be easier to get started. Just head to our GitHub page and follow the instructions. And in particular, this month, I'd like to give a special thanks to one of our partners for getting the Chinese traditional localization started. So this will be our 14th language. And we love to see the Comet community sort of coming together to lend their, local expertise. It just makes Comet better for everyone, particularly if you have customers in East Asian countries. Now, the traditional characters used all around the world, but nowadays mainly in use, of course, on the island of Taiwan. So this is the famous tourist photo of Observatory 101 in Taipei, which is the tallest building in the world for a while. So just diving back into some deeper new Comet features. So Comet Server allows you to remotely deploy a software upgrade to your live connected user accounts. You can do this individually for a single user from their live connected actions dialog. Just click the update software button and Comet Server will push an upgrade direct to that individual client. Or you can deploy the upgrade in bulk via the bulk upgrade campaign menu. And the campaign takes care of intelligently, waiting for devices to come online, avoiding interrupting running backup jobs, gives you an overall percentage indicator of the software uptake and, good things like that. So in Comet 22.5 Lysithea, there are more options to control the behavior of the bulk upgrade campaign. So first of all, you can use our query system down here to filter and select which devices should be considered eligible to receive the software update. So if you're troubleshooting issues on a specific platform, you can restrict the update to individual operating systems. You can filter by username and lots of other properties too. So this allows for a bit more fine-grained mass deployment without needing to, resort back to the individual updates. And another new option here is to control whether or not running jobs should be interrupted. So the bulk upgrade campaign normally avoids sending a software upgrade signal to the client if the job is running, because it's probably better to finish the backup with slightly older software rather than have no software and new software and an interrupted backup job. So, having the client be one or two versions behind the Comet server is not normally a problem. And as we do maintain a strong commitment to backwards compatibility. But, if the customer's job schedules are constantly running back to back, or if the device is offline most of the time, then the campaign system might not find any good opportunity to deploy the upgrade to that customer. And devices could fall significantly far behind. So it's now possible to override this behavior and ask for the bulk upgrade to be deployed regardless of any running jobs. And if you select this option, the software installer will terminate all of Comet's running process just as part of the upgrade. And so it will interrupt the running job. These new settings are all optional. You can just, you don't have to use them. They all default to the previous behavior, which is just send the upgrade out to everyone and do not interrupt running jobs. Bulk replace addresses. So for this one, I'm going to have to give a bit of backstory on Comet, and then I will build up to the feature. So Comet Server is split into multiple roles, including the auth role, where user accounts log in, and the storage role, which is one place where a customer might upload data to. And these are independent parts of the Comet Server, and you can enable or disable them as required. And when you log into the Comet Backup desktop app as a client, if you check the advanced options checkbox, you can see the server address that Comet server is logging into. Oh, sorry, Comet Backup client is logging into. And this is the auth role Comet server address. And if you have a Comet type storage vault in the customer settings, you check the hostname field for that storage vault, and this is the Comet server storage role address. And in most small Comet server environments, and even in many quite large Comet server environments, the auth role and the storage role will be both enabled on a single server. If you're using direct cloud storage, you might not even be using storage role. But in larger installations, the idea is that the auth role and the storage role can be decoupled. You can scale them independently. For instance, you could have one single auth role server for all customers and then many dozens of storage role servers. And in that case, these two hostname fields would have different content inside, and you've got a cluster of servers all working together. So the role system is pretty simple and flexible. Managing these URLs at scale can be a little difficult. So if you ever have to perform a server failover, migration, replication failover, there's two URLs that need to be changed, not just one. And the easiest and simplest way to do a failover is to just try and use DNS if you can. Update the DNS record that the customers are connecting to instead of changing a lot of people's URLs in the settings and storage file hostname settings. Sometimes these changes do need to be made. So it is possible to remotely redirect a user to a different auth role login address via the live connection action dialog. So you just go to an individual device, click the actions dialog, and then you can use this update login URL to change this to log them into a different auth role server. And you can also obviously change a lot of storage vault settings remotely, including changing the storage vault hostname. And you can do this individually for each individual user's page. Now, you're likely aware of all of this, so this is background information up to now. What you might not be aware of is that there is a way to do this in bulk too. So if you enable the advanced options checkbox, then on the user list page, you'll see a link to the bulk replace addresses page, which allows you to find and replace Comet type storage vault hostnames across your entire user base. So this is a hidden advanced page. It has been here for ages though. What is new in Comet 22.5 Lysithea is that this page has gained separate find and replace modes. So you can now use the new find only option to perform a dry run to see which customers are using any storage vault URL. So this is a helpful safety feature before switching to find and replace. But as well as that, it can also help with just generally finding storage vault addresses that are being used, which has all sorts of use cases, such as tracking down certain types of error that you can get from the constellation role. macOS Codesigning. Okay, again, I'm going to give a bit more backstory here and build up to the new feature. So starting from the start, Comet Server allows you to customize the branding for the client software, including changing the images, logos, text, EULA, icon for both the installer and for the application itself. When you download Comet Backup from your Comet Server web interface, Comet Server generates a custom installer on demand. And this custom installer contains all your branding, as well as the built-in URL for your Comet server, so no extra configuration is needed by the end user. So that's great, it's a really cool feature. However, one thing to know about newly generated installers is that nobody has ever seen this exe before, and so it's not immediately trusted by operating system security measures such as Smart Screen on Windows and Gatekeeper on macOS. Windows users are very likely to be familiar with the blue Smart Screen dialog. You've definitely seen this before. You know there's a Run Anyway button. But for macOS, if you don't use macOS deeply, so this is the macOS version basically of the same dialog, you might be surprised to learn that there is no Run Anyway button, which comes as a bit of a shock. It is possible to do Run Anyway. You have to know the secret trick, which is to right-click the installer and choose Open, and then this dialog has a Run Anyway button on it. But it's a pretty major user experience roadblock for macOS customers. In the way that you're officially meant to solve this problem, Microsoft and Apple's recommended solution is to codesign the installer. Codesigning is a full and complete solution. It makes your installers well-known and trustworthy. They're tied back to your certificate, which is tied back to your company. And both of these dialog boxes go away. It solves a lot of problems with installers, antivirus products. I would strongly recommend setting it up. And it's very easy to configure from inside your Comet server. So you go into the Comet server, settings page, client branding, click the little code signing button at the bottom, and just fill in the details. So you have to do this separately for both Smart Screen on Windows and Gatekeeper on macOS. For Windows, it's as simple as purchasing a certificate from one of our recommended vendors and uploading it to the Comet server settings, and then you're done. For macOS, now the slide is titled macOS code signing. So for macOS, the process was much more complicated. Comet server required you to purchase a certificate from Apple, which, that's just how it is. But in addition to this, the tools used to perform macOS code signing could only run on a real Mac machine. So not only did you have to buy the certificate, you also had to buy a Mac or rent a cloud Mac, configure it for remote SSH, set up some very careful permissions in order to allow Comet server to remote into it to sign the macOS installer. And everyone found this very difficult. It was difficult for our partners, and it was difficult for our support team to help people with. So it is with great relief that we are pleased to announce in 22.5 Lysithea that a Mac is no longer required for this process. You can simply purchase the certificate and upload it to the Comet server settings. Comet server will now handle all the necessary signing steps internally, no Mac required. We have further details on how exactly do you purchase an Apple certificate and register for App Store Connect, and all of that's in our full documentation. But this is a significant simplification of how you can deploy macOS clients going forward. Staying on the subject of the client app, so our Synology SPK installer was first publicly released in February this year as part of Comet 21.12.7, and it just narrowly made it into our last quarterly release, the 22.2 Elara series. It's been about 1 quarter since then, and over the last 3 months since that release, we've continued to improve the installer and our compatibility. So the platform compatibility has been extended to include more types of ARM CPU, including Synology NAS models based on the Armada, ComCerta, and Monaco platforms. So this resolves a pretty common roadblock for a lot of our partners. If you're not sure if this affected you, then Synology have a great page on their website about the exact NAS models that are using each platform, but it's mainly the older models. The package has been improved to better understand how Synology's idiosyncratic way of handling time zones works. We now provide clearer warnings on login failure, and we calculate device IDs in a more repeatable way. So just a lot of fixes. You should find that the Synology package installer just works in many more cases. Startup guide. So in the DSM-7 version of the installer, you see there's separate download links here for DSM-6 and DSM-7. In the DSM-7 version of the installer, some additional steps are required to grant sandbox permissions to the Comet Backup app. And so previously these steps were only listed in our official documentation. Now, if you are white labeling the Comet Backup software for your end users, it's a little bit difficult to share a link to this information because it's all Comet branded, not white label branded. So the latest versions of the installer now include a new built-in help page that explains how to configure the necessary permission settings for the Synology app to be able to back up your files. And so just having that information there, white labeled, immediately available to your customers, just streamlines that process a little bit. This is funny, actually. This is the second startup guide I've spoken about today. Hourly schedules. So when configuring a backup job schedule in Comet, you can now tell Comet to back up hourly, but only at certain times of day. So the main 2 use cases for this feature are to back up only 9 AM Monday to Friday when you know the customer's computer is on and working. And so that will, if you're sure the customer's computer is on, then you're not going to get any missed backup jobs. And the other use case for this feature is basically the exact opposite, to back up from outside business hours, 5 PM to 9 AM when you know the customer is not interactively using the computer is idle. Running the backup job is going to be less disruptive. So you can put 9 and 17 here in this box in either order to get either effect. And the hourly times specify when the backup job is allowed to run. Multiple time specifiers are supported, so if these checkboxes are not granular enough for you, you can just save it and add another range. Now, it's long since been possible to select an hourly schedule or a daily schedule for weekdays or individual backup times. But having them all together is a nice improvement that makes this kind of configuration much simpler. And so this was a popular suggestion from our feature voting page. If you haven't checked out our feature voting page, I'd really recommend it. We look at the system often to help guide our priorities, so it's a great way to help shape the future of Comet. Comet Server has a feature called Server Self-Backup to create backup copies of Comet Server's own configuration, all the user profile settings, the job history, and so on. And so the self-backup feature, a little bit interesting. Self-backup feature does not use all of our full chunking and deduplication infrastructure like a real Comet backup job normally does. And the reason for that is because if the Comet server itself experiences an outage to the point where you need to restore from backup, then a lot of the chunking and dedupe infrastructure is unavailable. So we've got a chicken and egg problem. And so instead, the server self-backup feature just creates simple passworded zip files in any storage location. This self-contained design, it breaks you out of that chicken and egg problem compared to using the full Comet chunking and deduplication infrastructure. And it's also just way less stressful in a disaster if all you need to do is unzip something. Now, if you have a very large Comet server, so we're talking multiple thousands of user accounts, millions of job logs, the overhead of performing a self-backup zip archive might be non-trivial. So the latest version of Comet Server, this is available in Comet 22.5 Lysithea, includes 2 key improvements to the server self-backup feature to reduce the CPU load. So first of all, you can see this new slider to adjust the compression level, making a trade-off between faster compression, the lower CPU impact, a larger file size, and smaller file size with a higher CPU impact. So if your Comet server is hosted on the kind of cloud provider where you pay for both CPU usage and storage usage, you might find it's a little bit unintuitive, but the storage cost of a larger self-backup can be lower than the CPU cost of performing more compression, depending on your infrastructure provider. As well as that, and maybe a bit more interesting, is a new option has been added to exclude the job history database from the Comet server self-backup. Now, the job history database is almost always the largest component of a self-backup. It's responsible for like 90% of the archive size and CPU impact. Now, it's still important to back up the job database, all the logs, job log, job history. However, if it was excluded, then perhaps the other parts of the Comet server configuration, the actual server config and the user profiles, if we could exclude the job history database, then maybe it would be feasible to back up everything else much more frequently. So excluding the job database also makes the generated zip archives much smaller, more accessible when you only want to restore the user profile settings or the server configuration. So it is still important to back up the job history database. So for large partners who are affected by this issue, we recommend having 2 self-backup schedules. You can create as many as you want. One frequent schedule that excludes the job database, and another less frequent backup that includes all databases. And more. We're coming up on 30 minutes already, so I'm just going to quickly run through a lot of smaller things. Restore as archive. So when you go to restore data in Comet, you can restore files and folders directly, or actually there are a lot of other options. You can restore Office 365 emails back to the cloud. You can stream restore data into another program, which is great for MySQL. You can restore to nowhere just to test that Comet is working, and you have the option to restore as an archive format. So the archive option supports zip. Obviously, that's the main one, but it also supports tar because on Linux you can untar something without needing any other programs installed. And tar has been around since 1979. Crazy to think it's from the 70s and it's still getting new versions. So the latest type of tar format is tar.zst using Z standard compression instead of gzip. And this results in a smaller file size while also being faster to compress and to decompress. And these files work with tar 1.31, which is in all the recent Linux distros, Debian 11, Ubuntu 21.10, Fedora 30, and Red Hat 9. Excuse me. Sorry. As well as this new archive format, we've also added tgz as a well-known alias for tar.gz, and the target directory is now created in the same way as normal restore. Sorry, I just drank my water wrongly. A few more things to quickly cover through here. Table state. So the tables in the Comet server web interface now properly remember their state when refreshing the page or using the back button. So this includes the rows per page, sorting, current page number, search term, and custom column selection. So when you use the back button, everything's remembered. If you log out and log back in again, your rows per page and custom column selections are remembered. And even when you upgrade the Comet server, it still remembers your rows per page. So that's a really nice improvement, especially if you spend a lot of time digging through the job history page, other large tables, and you don't want to lose where you're up to. Cross-tenant options. So perhaps you can see this other tenant badge here in the screenshot. So Comet server can be configured for multi-tenancy to give each of your reseller partners an isolated zone within your Comet server for their own individual customers. We've seen this feature used for reseller support and for hosted service offerings. Tenants have been a standard feature of Comet server for a long time now. They used to be called organizations, and we're continuing to improve the support. So when you're logged into the Comet server web interface as the top level administrator, you get to see the cross-tenant customers. And you will find that the available policy options now more accurately reflect the tenant's policies instead of showing unusable top-level options. And the Request Storage Vault drop-down option now correctly finds the tenant's list of requestable storage providers. So these changes should just make it a bit more seamless to manage a tenant's customers from the top-level account. And if you're logged in as the top-level admin, the Request Storage Vault button now shows its error messages directly too, instead of calling it an internal error and making you go dig through the logs. We've been very careful to not show sensitive errors to end users, but if you're logged in as the admin, then it's probably fine. So I think we made a good change here. Last one on this slide, time since job end. So we've got this filter system that can be used for searching job history and for generating backup job reports containing a summary table of that job history. So this query system is very flexible. It supports and or subclauses, grouping, drag and drop to rearrange, and you can filter for jobs based on many different properties, including the job's status, if it's a backup or restore, its upload and download size, and anything like this. And so the screenshot here is when we're using the query system to construct an email report for the customer. And there's quite a lot of flexibility here. So in our documentation, we have some recommended recipes, such as email me immediately if a job fails, otherwise just give me a weekly summary, and which is a very convenient kind of thing to offer. Now, it's important that when you construct a custom report, that there is a time bound on it. Now, without a time bound, the system will produce a report containing jobs from all time. So the preview button on this dialog is really helpful in ensuring that the result is correct. And what's new here this quarter in 22.5 Lysithea is that there is a new available clause to filter by time since job end. So this joins the existing time since job start filter. And this helps catch some edge cases, depending on exactly what you're looking for. If you're not sure, then we advise following the recipe in the documentation. Scripting and APIs. So quick update here. Don't worry, this is my last slide. I realize we're a bit over time. If you've been looking at Comet for a while, you will notice that the customer's device running Comet backup is always represented by a device ID. So this identifier is automatically generated based on a private set of hardware and software identifiers. It's designed to remain stable throughout the lifetime of the device. And so the device ID is a consistent way to identify the device. It stays the same, even if you uninstall Comet, log into a different account. We rely on that to bill you properly. Now, if you're trying to use Comet's API that's full of these device IDs with some other system, it's really helpful to know what the current device ID actually is. So if you're for instance, if you're a managed service provider, an MSP, using an RMM tool like Synchro, Ninja, ConnectWise, Kaseya, you can have scripts running on a customer's PC. And you may want to know the customer's Comet device ID in order to make API calls related to the current device. On Windows, this has been possible up till now by reading a certain registry key, and that works pretty well. But of course, macOS and Linux devices don't have a registry. So we have added this new command. It's a cross-platform way to get the current device ID. All you do is you run backup tool info device ID, and the command outputs the current device ID. You can run this from a script from your RMM, and it should have the same result as Comet. So that's quite nice. Nice integration feature for custom scripts. Another thing that's new is command environment variables. So Comet supports running commands as part of each backup job. You can configure a command to run before or after a backup job, or even there's a third option, which is immediately when a VSS snapshot is thawed out. And these commands are run as part of the job. The output of your custom command is included in the job report, and if your custom command fails with a non-zero exit code, then the job report will be marked as unsuccessful. So what's new this quarter in Comet 22.5 Lysithea is that the commands are run with additional environment variables available. So your custom command can pick up on details about the job itself. So these environment variables help you integrate Comet with other systems. So your command gets to know what job is running, what it's doing. So you could signal that, for example, you could have an after command that signals to your RMM software when a job is completed, including the job ID, device ID, and things like that. So this feature is highly useful for software vendor partners who are looking to integrate Comet more closely. New APIs. So there are new APIs if you're the top level server administrator to target individual tenants. There's a new property that tells you the total number of virtual machines that were found in a backup job. And there are new APIs for everything mentioned today, every single feature, from the self backup, hourly schedule, Synology, you name it. There is a brand new updated API for that. And in fact, we have full, complete 100% API coverage. Anything you can do in the Comet server web interface can be done via our API. Comet Server's web interface is an SPA, single page app, and this has been an excellent technical foundation for us. It means our development team reuses the official Comet Server API to build the web interface. And that means the API is stress tested, it has broad feature coverage, and any developer, if you're a developer or if you can hire a developer, your developers can get the same experience we do internally. We want that to be a great experience. So the API makes use of JSON over HTTP. It's really simple to interact with. What you're seeing here is our public PHP library. We have sample code and SDKs for several programming languages. So I am done with plugging the API. That's all I have for today. Are there any questions? I can see a couple questions in the questions panel already, so I'll answer those in just a second. But just to recap, if anyone else has more questions, I've talked about 22.5 Lysithea, our new quarterly release, including the new storage providers, new Wasabi regions, iDrive E2, Cloudflare R2, the AWS and IAM Requestable. I talked about the new Getting Started guide sidebar in the web interface. I talked about language translations, the remote bulk upgrades, and now have additional options. A bit of background about server roles and leading up to the new Find Vault addresses feature. I talked about macOS Codesigning. Wonderful, what a relief. New feature to just directly upload macOS certificates to your Comet server. I talked about the latest improvements to our Synology package. I talked about hourly schedules, so you can configure the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, much more easily than you used to be able to. Server self backup now has options to adjust the compression and exclusions to reduce that CPU load. I talked about restore as archive, table state, time since job end, scripting, and APIs. So there are a few questions here, and I will start from earliest first. So somebody asked Dropbox, and I believe this was related to, can we store data on Dropbox? A really interesting question. Not right now, sorry. Comet supports a lot of different storage providers, but they are generally sort of business-oriented cloud storage providers, the Amazon S3s of the world. It would be really interesting to support Dropbox as a storage provider. I understand there's a feature request for this, so please just update the feature request for now, and we will work this into our priority list. We have a person from iDrive here. Hi, James. Just a reminder that iDrive E2, a brand new storage provider on the market with an industry-leading price, $4 per terabyte per month, and there's a free trial, especially for Comet Backup users. So just visit the URL, and we can take advantage of this fantastic deal. A question here, can you tell me the fastest backup cloud storage for New Zealand? I'm always happy to hear from more New Zealand partners. It's really interesting actually, because most of our partner base is from the US, EU, other countries around the world, and we don't see that many partners from New Zealand, obviously just being a smaller country, not that much population. My understanding is that the fastest backup cloud storage in New Zealand is Catalyst Cloud, because they are based data centers in Auckland and Wellington. However, anyone based in Sydney also has excellent performance, and would generally recommend Wasabi Sydney because of the integration with the requestable feature to automatically provision new customer buckets. The fastest storage is when the backup goes direct to the storage rather than proxying through an extra hop like you would have to do with Catalyst. Another question about iDrive E2. Well, I can see they're being very popular at the moment. I missed the beginning of the presentation. Would very much like to use iDrive E2. How do I start using iDrive with Comet? Yeah, it's not currently available as a requestable storage vault. Please watch this space. Hopefully we'll have something more to announce very soon. Until then, you can set up iDrive E2 as a storage provider, either individually for individual customers, just create separate buckets for them and set up their storage vault. The other thing you can do is set it up iDrive E2 as a backend for the Comet Server storage role. And that way, when the customer backs up to Comet Server storage role, Comet Server will then forward that data to iDrive E2. So that's another way to do it. That gives you a bit more automation, but easier to use at the expense of there's an extra network hop. So that can affect the performance a little bit. But it's reasonably straightforward just to create individual iDrive E2 buckets and keys for individual users and put them in directly. One more question about tenants. So the tenant feature in Comet Server creates a whole separate area of the Comet Server. And these tenants have got individual user accounts, they've got custom branding, they've got custom URL addresses, they've got custom server admin logins. It's almost like a completely separate Comet server, in fact, and our Comet hosted product is based on the tenant feature. So if the experience that you get is basically an entirely separate Comet server for your tenant. I think that's all the questions we have time for today. We really have gone a bit over time. Thank you everyone for your questions. There was a great set of questions. I think that's all the questions we have time for today, but we still want to hear from you. If you have any questions at all, we're always happy to help out. More than happy to hear your questions by ticket through the usual ticket system at account.cometbackup.com, or you can email us using hello@cometbackup.com, or we do support phone calls. Now, our company is based in New Zealand. We do have international support teams for round-the-clock level 1 technical support, but if you want a sales call, or if you want any more advanced technical support or troubleshooting, we'll need to figure out a good time that suits both us in New Zealand. We've gone into winter now, Southern Hemisphere, UTC +12, and a good time that works for both us and in your country. Makes scheduling a little bit complicated, but all you have to do is go to the Comet website. At the bottom of the page, you click Contact Us, and then there's an option to schedule a phone call with a time zone widget showing our available times, and it will just work out everything for you. We're more than happy to jump on a call. Often that's a very quick way of clearing the air and getting answers to any questions you might have. So that's all from me. Hopefully you've managed to take away some useful information. So please check out the latest version of Comet 22.5 Lysithea. All users of the previous quarterly series, 22.2 Elara and earlier, are encouraged to upgrade, but we're happy for you to continue using older quarterly versions if you feel like it. Hope you're all keeping well and safe, and you can expect another webinar for the next quarterly release in 3 months' time. Cheers.